Welcome to Property Quorum. As per usual, we are joined by the stalwarts of Property Quorum, plus a couple of notable experts. Hamish McLay, of course, of Search and Convey, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, Juliet Baboolal of Gunner Cook, and joining us extra, Zahrah Aullybocus of Nexa Law, and of course the incredible Michelle Carr, guardian angel of construction. Thank you everybody here for taking the time out of us to discuss what is a thorny and interesting topic, the post-budget norm. And without oh gosh, we're getting contacted by the other side, I think. Without any remorse, I'm going to throw Hamish straight under the bus.
Right. Well, we did have, as we all know, quite an intrusion on our brains, I think, from the full content of last week's budget. And I do rather think that as a consequence of what came about, certainly retaining some aspects of what the previous government had sort of put in place, like the return to stamp duty, as was the norm, alongside various other changes, there was going to be a difference in what was going to happen in the whole of the marketplace. And one of the key issues I feel, and of course we've got some great experts here who can put me in my place, is the feeling that first-time buyers make a significant contribution to a healthy property market. And if for any reason what they are doing happens to be disturbed, we get into a sort of situation that if we don't have the first-time buyers actually coming in, there's no demand for those 1-2 bedroom properties, and therefore the whole market gets slightly displaced. We start getting the wrong people actually sort of buying, which doesn't make it easy for the first-time buyers. And I think there could be a transition because of that. We've got some great people. And just in case anyone didn't realise, Chris might be leaping off fairly swiftly. If he does, it's not because he's got any challenge with the audience here today. It's because he's awaiting a vessel to take him across the waters. And as soon as the queue...
I'm going to go straight to Chris. Chris from the outside broadcast. Chris, challenges... is, in fact, as Hamish says, the new crop of buyers going to be the lifeblood of this? So what's your feelings on the immediate feedback from the budget?
The thing is, the first-time buyers do drive the market. They do need the first-time buyers, and they need every bit of help they can get. So they've been through so much over the last few decades in terms of the escalating cost of purchasing property. So they do need as many incentives and breaks as they can possibly get, because without them, they allow the rest of the market to move.
It's unfortunate. Your sound seems to be suffering, but I think we've got the basic message there. I'm going to go straight to Juliet. What's your feedback from the budget, please?
Well, it's all about having insight in terms of when the stamp duty changes are going to happen, etc. The expectation is for there to be more affordable housing stock available to first-time buyers. So that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. But in terms of the diligence that's required when you're buying a property, whether you're a first-time buyer or it's your second property, it's still there in terms of going to the right professionals, budgeting correctly, knowing exactly what your exposure is, what the risks are. All of these things remain the same. But it's understanding, those changes that are coming into place and how they affect you, and having the right professionals on hand will obviously be an asset to a first-time buyer who will not have seen some of these things before.
Well, I'm going to go straight over to the incomparable Wendy Gibson of the First Time Buyers Club. Now, you're absolutely focused on how it affects those first-time buyers. What's your impressions, please?
And yes, as it has been alluded to already, the market is actually very reliant on first-time buyers. They tend to be the ones who quite often buy properties directly from developers. And over the years, on average, between 25 and 33% of all transactions that take place every year usually are with first-time buyers. So that's an enormous portion of the market.
Wow. Okay. Well, it should affect us all. Let me go straight to Michelle Carr. Michelle, you're dealing with people right at the sharp end of this. Surely, what effect do you think the budget's going to have?
In regards to property and first-time buyers, I think there's a bigger plan. I have a feeling that just having a look at some of the development that's going on locally, for me, in some of the cities that I have other projects in, I have a feeling that they are trying to get first-time buyers back into new builds. And I think what they're going to do eventually is bring back the Help to Buy scheme, because the Help to Buy scheme, I think is a bit of a moneymaker for the government, because I don't know if anyone knows about the Help to Buy scheme, but it was scrapped a while ago. But they would put in either 20, 30 or 40% of the price, loan you 20, 30, 40% of the price of your house for up to 5 years, and you paid £1 a month for 5 years, and then you start to pay interest after that. And they were also doing, a lot of the developers were paying the stamp duty for first-time buyers. And I think that is possibly what they're paving the way for. And I did find it very interesting that the after 5 years of where this scheme was the biggest, the interest rate suddenly went from 2% to 5, 6, 7%, whatever people were getting. And it just happened to tie inside with 5 years being up. So therefore the government are getting the interest rates as on top of the Bank of England. So I have a feeling that may come back into play. And that's part of the review on the budget, is to push people back, because there are a lot of projects now, whether or not, I know Chris might have a different theory, but I know a lot of people think there are a lot of properties around that you see that are new builds that are empty. And whether they're empty because that's a way of getting over tax issues by having all your money invested in a property that's empty or not, there are a lot of empty new builds. And I just think, and there's a lot of being redeveloped too. So I just think that maybe that's the purpose of some of these budgetary changes.
That's very cynical, Michelle. Probably right on the nose, but still very cynical. Zahrah, welcome. So what are your feelings post-budget?
At the end of the day, if you need a place to live, you're going to find a way to buy a place that you need to live, aren't you? So in my mind, if you have to buy, whether it's first-time buyer, separation, marriage, whatever, that people are still going to buy.
This is not Zahrah making a suggestion to anyone, by the way.
People are still going to buy. They're just going to have to look at their finances and work out what's going to be best for them. And following on from what Michelle said earlier, is that my experience of Help to Buy is that it artificially pushed up house prices. So this is why they're kind of out of affordability range. But also a lot of buyers are becoming savvier now, because they are aware of the cladding scandal, and inevitably a lot of new builds are flats. And so people are looking at this going, do I want this headache?
Interesting enough, thank you, Juliet. I just had a note sent from Chris Gilsenan saying that interest rate reduction at the BOE expected today.
Yeah, I've seen some discussions. I've seen some forums of brokers discussing that. Yeah, absolutely. That is what is predicted.
So first-time buyers, yet I don't know. It seemed like it might be good news for them. I'm not so sure anymore.
But it's also having all your, eggs in a row. It's one thing if you're talking about, the government providing these incentives, etc. But, it's always the exposure. For example, if you don't make your mortgage payment, you're going to lose your home. If you haven't got enough deposit, the Help to Buy scheme isn't going to help you. So the reality is, you have got to get yourself, as Zahrah says, if you're buying a property, you'll find a way, but you've got to meet the criteria before you actually get on the ladder anyway. Wow,
gosh. Wendy, whether you've got your eggs in a row or ducks in a basket, it still seems to be that necessarily that you're not really being helped.
Indeed, given how much reliance there is on the first-time buyers to keep the housing market and the moving industry moving, excuse the pun, it doesn't really feel as though they are taking or being very friendly towards first-time buyers. So just to allude to what you were saying earlier about interest rate changes, again, there is an interest rate expectation, as in it's going to drop by perhaps around 0.25%, but that's not really going to be enough to move the needle, to move mortgage payments into a more affordable bracket for first-time buyers.
Wow. Zahrah, a little bird tells me that Help to Buy has been an artificial inflation.
Yeah, new builds are priced at a 30% premium. And so if people are going around looking at recent house price sales and they've got a new build on there, that price is going to be higher. And so the estate agent will say, look, I'm going to sell it for this price because that new build down the road has sold for that price. And so it's pushing up prices of normal properties as well.
Oh, I see. So that right. Okay. So it is very artificial. Very artificial. Okay, Hamish, you see things at the sharp end of the stick too. You see these. You see all the searches coming through. What's your impression?
Well, the what we have to look at, I feel, is which part of the country you also sort of come from. When we look at sort of certain parts of the country, we can actually sort of see the house prices there are significantly different. Oxford used to be the second most. Oxfordshire used to be the second most expensive area within the UK. It's now the third. Apparently, first obviously we know to be London. Second is Bristol. Third is actually Oxfordshire. But once we get towards the Midlands and beyond, the house pricing structure does actually sort of change. But even so, I guess it gives somebody who's further north an opportunity to push those prices up that little bit further. But I mean, we hear so often about interest rates and we say, oh, wow, fantastic. Well, over a time period, yes, if you look at the cost of repaying a 25-year mortgage, it might make some impact. However, on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis, we're speaking about small amounts of money. So that's not going to impact a great deal. I think what we can say, and this is where the positivity comes, the fact that rate is coming down is a positive gesture. And it does give people a little bit more confidence in terms of what they're doing. But and of course, Chris has had to dive off to get his boat. Well, hopefully walked on.
Let's hope he didn't dive off the boat. But yes, okay.
But he's one that could actually sort of tell, because he's if you like, he's looking at opportunity to help people to move, not so much directly, but he's actually sort of scouring the area. And he always says that basically there are so many cogs involved, and it's all of the cogs sort of working together. And I think what we're seeing with the budget, there's an extension of the number of cogs. It's not just between the sort of buyer and the seller. There is an awful lot more parameters that we need to look at. And this is where it comes back to what Juliet was saying, that due diligence is even more important at this present time than it would possibly normally be. But the good thing is you get the right guys behind you, the right people behind you. We've got some great experts here, and they will actually offer that. And it's getting guidance from the right person that makes the difference. And there are ways through it. And I do think it's fundamentally that we keep a watchful eye, and that's what we need to do, and keep that watchful eye alongside a professional who's actually going to help you sort of through that guidance. And someone like Wendy, if you're a first-time buyer, someone like Wendy is obviously sort of ideal because that's her prime focus. And whereas some of the rest of it, and of course, I mean, Zahrah's trying to actually push it through, and of course, Juliet's working on the sort of larger scale of things, looking more at what's actually sort of going on within a project rather than individual property. So there's a nice mix here of people who know what's going on. But back to what was being said by so often in our quorums, that get the right people behind you, find the professional.
Yeah, I'm the one person you missed off from that list, of course, is Michelle Carr, because Michelle Carr is what keeps motivating all those contractors to actually get things done correctly. And all the mix and all the muddle that's going on at the moment with all the cladding crisis, sorry to link two things together, with the fact that the changes in the budget, do you think in your mind it's going to have a negative or positive effect on new builds?
I don't think new builds will change. Ultimately, the people that build the new builds and make the money out of the new builds are I wouldn't say budgetary exempt, but it doesn't really hit them like it does everybody else.
You're saying they're insulated from its effects a little bit more.
Yes. But also, the other thing is what we haven't discussed, which whether that affects first-time buyers or not, I don't know, but you've got people that are investing in property. Now, they're investing in property. They will be making properties that aren't habitable or shouldn't be habitable, should we say, more habitable for the rental market, because there are people that just physically cannot afford or aren't, as Juliet said, are not in a position to buy. Some of the changes in the budget are going to make people think twice about purchasing these properties. So you've got an impact on the rental market. Now, how that affects first-time buyers, I don't know if it's a positive or a negative impact, but ultimately it's going to impact people that don't have affordable housing, and there is potentially not going to be as much affordable housing in the rental market. And where do those people go if they can't afford to purchase a property? They don't have the deposit, they don't have the finances, they don't have the credit history, whatever it may be. And then the rental market is also damaged because people aren't investing in these properties. Where's that going to leave us?
It is a sobering question, Juliet. Where does it leave us?
It's a tough one. I'm actually seeing, just following up from what Michelle said, I'm seeing a lot of developers who are going back to the local authority, renegotiating Section 106s, paying additional monies just to remove the affordable housing requirements on the Section 106s. So, where is that balance? And it goes back to whoever comes up with our budget and whoever this committee is, they need to look at society as a whole, because who are you affecting? I've got lots of developers with empty units that need to be sold. The banks are knocking at their door because their term of their loan has come to an end and they now need to pay these back. And the exit route was meant to be the sale of these units, but no one's buying them because, as Wendy says, people are now looking at the cladding.
Oh, I think you've muted yourself. Sorry about that.
People are looking at the issues with new build leases, etc. So they're thinking, do I really want to invest in that? So there is a glitch in the system, so to speak. But it's up to first-time buyers or buyers as a whole to find those ways, because one does. There are solutions, but it's being innovative, and that that comes with a cost. And I can only sort of stress what we've said before. You've got to get the right advice, because this is not a fly-by-night decision. It's a decision that has consequences, and you've got to know what you're getting yourself into.
Zahrah, it seems that we need to be innovative.
Yeah, I don't know what to say apart from, making sure people are aware of what they're walking into. Adding on to what Juliet was saying regarding the Section 106s, it's not just flats, it's houses. And the fact that local authorities do not have the funding to maintain what other infrastructure is being put into these developments. So what we've had historically now over the last 20-25 years are developers putting in place estate management charges. I see a lot of complaints about the sites not actually being looked after, but people being charged an arm and a leg. And then somebody else sort of saying this only just this morning that, it's a continual responsibility. If you've bought, say, on an estate with a mixture of houses and flats, you've got parks, roads, estate sewers and things like that, which you're paying that for that on top of your council tax and things like that. So it all starts adding up, doesn't it? And people are sort of saying, well, actually, I don't, I'm paying council tax already. Why am I then having to pay another 200, 300, sometimes more pounds a year for maintenance of these areas? And of course, if the council aren't, or the water authority are not adopting these areas, we don't know to what standards they've been installed. So you could end up with all sorts of problems with, you know, sewers not working properly and things like that. You know, going back to what the Law Society thinks we should be doing, which is advising people on impending doom of climate change, when we've got an immediate problem with the building safety crisis. Hello, it starts with the builders putting, you know, not putting in adequate infrastructure in the first place. So that's where your doom and gloom is going to come from, because the flooding's going to happen because the developers didn't leave enough drainage and things like that. So it's kind of like a vicious circle. But what they're doing is they're attacking it from the back end, thinking, you know, let's put all this information in a little digital data package for Joe Public. You know, Joe Public doesn't know what they're looking for. And they're not dealing with the actual problem at hand, which is the builders not doing stuff properly.
Well, I have to immediately go for a right of reply to the Michelle Carr. What's going on? It seems like there's a vicious circle going here. You're muted, by the way, Michelle. Michelle, you're muted.
Sorry. I don't actually fully agree with that, only because I haven't had that experience. So in my experience and all the properties and all the developments that I've been involved in, the local authorities have to adopt the sewage systems, and you have to be quite stringent in the information that you supply them. What then happens, and a lot has happened in my local area, is the problem is that the water authorities, the sewage companies, whoever they may be, the rest of the areas aren't man enough to cope with it. So around where I live, I live in a new development. It's 6 years old now. There's another very big development that's had massive issues, and there have been lots of roads closed where they've been basically replacing a lot of the waterworks because the infrastructure that is already existing doesn't cope. So the restrictions on the council will get, and I totally agree with what you're saying about council. I live on a private road. We don't get any discount in our council tax. We have to maintain our area. We also have to maintain it for the public. We get kids coming and destroying our communal areas, and we have to pay to repair all of that. And these costs are mounting up all the time. But when it comes to the drainage and things like that, they're very, very strict on the requirements that you have to do. But what they're not doing is spending the right amount of money upgrading the infrastructure outside of these new developments. So allow the new developments and the developers do the infrastructure, but then it clogs up elsewhere because the pipes aren't ready to take it.
Wow.
It is a problem.
Okay, well, Wendy, I'm going to give you the last word before I pass back to Hamish to round it all up.
Well, what this really goes to show that for first-time buyers, if they're trying to disseminate all of this information, it's really complex. There's a lot of needing to understand quite a lot of planning and building, etc. This is where you really need to rely on the help of the professionals that you engage. This is the area where you really pay for what you get, and quality advice is what you need when you are buying your first home.
Wow. Well, do you know what? Sage words. Hamish, would you take us home, please?
I think really adding on from what Wendy said and what everybody said here, it does vary from different parts of the country as to what in fact is going on. We've had serious flooding. It's very flat round here in Bicester, and there aren't any rivers. Actually, sorry, there is a very small river running through Bicester, which is flooded twice because they moved it a couple of times because it was that small. They thought, we'll stick it that side of the town, and then we'll move over.
Zahrah sent me a note, quite rightly, saying that they're allowing developers to build on floodplains.
Oh, yes. In fact, it's interesting. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm speaking to an expert on removing floods, but it depends which part of the country we're actually sort of coming from. However, my actual sort of major concern here is the builders of these properties, the developers of these properties want to sell them, and they will try and push through and try and push the buyers through going down a particular sort of route. And that particular route will not be going through the quality of diligence that's required of the legal advice they're being given. It does need to be somebody of the quality of sort of Juliet. And it's somebody, somebody that's been around for sort of some time. People like Juliet and Zahrah, who've actually been around a long time, they know what's going on in the background. They are aware of it. And of course, the great thing about sort of Wendy, she can actually give you guidance right the way through. But I think from Michelle's perspective, she's so right, because she can actually sort of see the whole of the project and what's actually sort of going on in that, because she actually sort of manages the houses within her area. So I think it depends very, very much on us as an individual, because we play a big part in the direction that we're actually going to go. So we need to select carefully the professionals that we actually want to work with in conjunction of what we're actually sort of doing, because it will help us in the long term. It's not so good in 5 years' time finding out that the builder still hasn't put the right kind of cladding in there. It doesn't do any good at all to find out in 2 years' time, or in fact, it probably won't take that long, that it is in the floodplain and there isn't really adequate facility at the moment. They'll sort it out eventually, but in the meantime, you've got to go paddling in your welly boots.
Well, paddling pools notwithstanding, I think it need to round this off today and thank everyone for attending. Of course, Juliet Baboolal of Gunner Cook, Hamish McLay, our esteemed leader here at Search and Convey, with great thanks to Michelle Carr, a guardian angel of construction, Wendy Gibson, First Time Buyers Club, and Zahrah Aullybocus of Nexa Law. It seems absolutely crystal clear to me that the only way that any one of us normal humans are going to be able to navigate our way through this current property, I don't like the word crisis, but thing, is by the use of real world experts with real world knowledge and experience. So I would say any of the people here on this call are excellent examples of that. But all of you out there making a way through this property jungle, I urge you to keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, look after that mental health, and seek professional advice. Until next time, I wish you well. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye bye now.